book for the tasks to complete for today. This is U1L6, Unit 1, Lesson 6. You can either find the tasks to complete under assignments on the Disease and Health homepage, or just scroll down to that weekly calendar table, find today's date, and look for the plan for U1L6. That'll have everything that I'm hoping to get through today. First thing was homework review. You guys had to complete the Stuff You Should Know podcast, which we were discussing right at the end of class, as well as the chapters on diabetes, just notes and a reflection on that. Any questions on those two assignments? Anything you were stumped on or confused by or wanted help on? All right. Then I did want to pick up with collage sharing, and I was hoping to kind of just go down the list. So Margot, Rory, and William, would you be willing to share? William, did you share already? You remember? No? Okay. Okay. We'll go in that order. So Margot, are you willing to?
Give me a second. Let me find it.
Oh, I'll pull it up.
Okay.
So
cool.
I've got it open. You can, I mean, if you need to kind of refresh your memory, but should have it right here. So yeah, just telling us about your summer and yourself and everything else. All right. Tell us about it.
Well, I kept it pretty stylized because I felt like it. But so I didn't do like a whole ton because, you know, but it's my second summer in Santa Barbara. So I like got it really into surfing, And then I spent a lot of time with my dog and like hung out. I briefly visited Mexico. I did a lot of oceany things, I guess. I had an internship for like an ocean humanitarian group, whatever. And then I wanted to study like infection, like biological weapons. Like just because I think they're like really interesting.
Yep.
And
we'll learn a bit about bioterrorism.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it.
Do you like longboard, shortboard? Do you have a certain type of surfboard you like to use?
Mean, like either your longboard. Yeah, I'm not proficient enough to be like on like the shortboard, but my stepbrother comes down from LA a bunch, so I'm working with him to get there eventually.
Nice. All right, thanks for sharing. Rory, you willing to talk about yours?
Yes. So I also did a lot of surfing and a lot of falling on my surfboard, and I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, and then 4 chickens. And so I did a lot of skateboard rides and bike rides just because not a lot else to do. I got my permit, so that's why the car is there. And then I want to learn more about like diseases of the brain.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll look at maybe some brain parasites, and you might be able to research a couple other little brain damage things. So what are the names of your 2 cats and 2 dogs?
So my 2 dogs are Molly and Pippa, and then the cats are Jade and Pixie.
Nice. And your big skateboard fall, was that towards the end of the summer, middle of summer, beginning of summer?
It was probably about July.
Okay. All right, well, glad you're able to recover. Were you just like going down like a 45-degree hill or something like that? Crazy?
Yeah, I don't really remember the hill. It's just I was going super fast and then got speed hills.
All right. Thanks for sharing. William, any luck with your microphone?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sounds like it's coming through. Let's give it a try. Talk us through it.
Surfing for the first time.
I hate to say it, but it sounds like I feel like we get like the initial sound and it kind of fades out, like it gets overwhelmed. So we can kind of troubleshoot what's going on with you and come back. We can have you share maybe another day once we figure that out. Let's see. Anthony, would you be willing to share quickly?
Already went.
Oh, you already went?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, you're right. How about Leah?
Sure.
Okay, let me find yours here real quick. All right. Close down these ones real quick. Nice.
Yeah, so I didn't do a lot of camping this summer, but I am from Colorado, so I did see a lot of mountains. And also the dumpster fire, I saw a literal dumpster fire like the day before school started, and I thought that just summed up the year, so that's why that's there. Otherwise, I learned how to drive stick over the summer, hence the Jeep, and then, because that's like the only car made now that really comes in a stick shift, I feel like. And then I also went up to Seattle for like a week and visited family, so that's why the boat's there. I also spent a lot of time drinking iced coffee and hanging out with my dog, which was about as fun as it sounds. And then my interests are like the treatment of these diseases, so like the healthcare side and like what medications and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get in a little bit into pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. So, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Shih Tzu named Pebbles.
Nice. I actually also have. We got a Jeep Wrangler over the summer, an old one, with the purpose. I've always wanted to learn how to drive a stick, and so it's a stick shift. And anyway, yeah, it's been good. Definitely feels like more like you're driving when you're driving a stick shift than an automatic. So, awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right. Again, we'll just keep working through those at the start of each class. Okay, next thing we're going to do is I'm going to split you into groups to take a look at some graphs again. We are going to kind of bring this full circle. We started this unit off by looking at graphs about modern causes of death and things like that, which led us into non-communicable diseases. We're going to explore a little bit more of that today. So we're on step number 3 right now. I'm going to throw you into breakout rooms of 4. And what I would like you to do is on the tasks to complete list on step 3, there's a link to a slideshow that has a couple graphs on it. And just like we did before, I'll share my screen here really quickly. I'll throw you into 4 groups. You should be able to see your group number, group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. And so group 1, you should look at graph number 1 and just discuss what data, what conclusions you can draw from that. Group 2, look at graph 2, and so on. The instructions are there on the very first slide as well. We'll do this for just 4 minutes and then come back together to share. So we break you into 4 breakout rooms here. And we'll come back together in about 4 minutes. Go for it. Graphs? Please have a chat. All right, I'm good. Make sure you designated a speaker as well, just to do a quick share. Wait for everyone else to trickle back in. Yeah, was everyone able to open up the graphs? All right. Yeah, we'll be wrapping up non-communicable diseases today, and I think some of this is pretty interesting. So, okay, looks like we are all back. Okay, I'm just going to pull up the graphs on my screen, and we'll go group by group, and then whoever was designated as the speaker can elaborate a little bit. So, group number 1, who's your speaker?
Hi, so this graph shows how the causes of death in the future, and the biggest thing to notice is that high income deaths are much lower than like middle and low income, because that could be attributed to like more wealthy people having better access to healthcare. And infectious diseases tend to like the numbers become smaller, while non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular diseases and cancers become more prevalent.
Nice. Yeah, I should have actually explained that. The CVDT there, that's cardiovascular disease. Excellent. Yeah, pretty crazy looking at high income versus middle and low income. It seems like completely disproportionate, but I think that's also just more reflective of the populations within wealth distributions, right? Not very high number of people at the high income level as well. Okay, group number 2, who's your speaker?
That's me. So we just basically talked about how we have 4 non-communicable diseases with these 4 risk factors, and with the exception of chronic respiratory disease, that they pretty much have a direct correlation between the risk factor and the disease. So that leads to the conclusion that they're all very preventable, because these are all risk factors that you can either choose to partake in or not partake in. And that also led to the idea of this being more of a modern Western disease, because the environment that we created ourselves is leading to the increase in some of these diseases.
Nice. Yes. Hence that word modifiable. There's definitely life choices people are making in the long term that are contributing to the rise of these conditions. Okay, group 3, who's your speaker?
Okay, so we had the third graph, and it was kind of interesting to us because it was showing mortality rate along with incident rate of each of the bigger cancers. We noticed there was a really high mortality rate for like pancreas, liver, lung, but very low mortality rate for comparatively for like breast and uterine. But wait, what? Whatever.
Yeah.
And then so I think we kind of said that it'd be interesting to have the exact like percentage, because it's kind of hard to compare one. Like you can compare the mortality to the incidence of one kind of cancer, but it's harder to compare the mortality of it to other kinds of cancers without that percentage. And then also why. So like pancreatic is so high, why is that? And then like why is liver so high, and why is versus some of these other cancers?
Yeah, you wonder what they mean by age standardized. Like what age did they exclusively look at, and yeah, how would that impact it too? Awesome. Group 4, who's your speaker?
That would be me. So this is just looking at lung cancer across the world, and then the incidence versus mortality rates, like the graph above. So obviously lung cancer is more prevalent among developed countries because of access to tobacco, and we're also talking about pollution because factories and stuff like that produce a ton of pollution which harms our lungs. But we also have a lower mortality rate due to our access to healthcare and our robust healthcare systems. And then also what's kind of interesting is males have way more risk of lung cancer than females, at least by this chart. Because I mean, there's no discrepancy really between females and males smoking, like both do it pretty regularly. Especially prevalent among less developed regions.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? That's what really got me about this graph is that lane. And you make a good observation about like what are smoking rates between males and females in different cultures. And you're right, like I feel like I don't notice men smoking more than women, I guess, but you do wonder if I think smoking in terms of advertising and things like that, they definitely cater more towards male and this kind of like tough guy, appearance. And I wonder if that contributes to it or what it is. Yeah, good observation about the different economic levels. And I like that too, that we tend to immediately think about smoking, but I think you made a great observation about how it's not necessarily just that. There's also other forms of air pollution, regulation against construction materials like asbestos, which is a huge cause of lung cancer, which is regulated in most developed countries and not so much in other countries. So great observations, everybody. Anything else anyone wanted to add to any of those? Okay, bear with me. I'm going to take you through one last little summary presentation on non-communicable diseases, which will tie into these graphs that you were just presenting on again. And this should hopefully take less than 10 minutes. My goal here is to introduce you to this idea of risk factors in particular, which are important to keep in mind. Okay, so I'm just trying to get my iPad hooked up here. Okay, my iPad is not finding my computer for some reason. So we might just have to go with the slides. Sorry, kiddos, I meant to test fire this right before class. Oh, I see the problem. Okay, here we go. All right, everyone seeing an overview of non-communicable diseases? Can I get verbal confirmation?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. So these are slides I found that were created by the Center for Disease Control, CDC, as well as presented by the World Health Organization, also called WHO, which I know is a confusing anagram. But my goal today is just to summarize the 4 main non-communicable diseases and give you a clear definition of those, and what are the risk factors attributed with that, which is what a lot of you are getting at by looking at those slides we were just sharing. So you'll see this abbreviation a lot, NCD, that's just non-communicable disease. And they define it as chronic conditions that do not result from acute infectious processes. So this isn't viruses, this isn't bacteria, this is more like lifestyle choices, right? This is a prolonged course of things. It's not something that you can usually resolve spontaneously. And these are the things that we're seeing more and more commonly now as contributing towards causes of death. So we've talked about a number of these within this unit. So we've covered cardiovascular disease, we've covered cancer, we're just discussing diabetes. The only other one that I'll mention in a little bit more detail is the chronic respiratory disease, but there's also neurological disorders, arthritis, unintentional injuries, and we'll touch on some of these in our later units. As you guys concluded from this graph, definitely, regardless of income, right, versus high income, middle income, low income, cardiovascular disease is the number one, right, the largest contributor to causes of death. But you can see that high income populations are definitely less impacted by infectious diseases in particular. And also, again, they're just kind of lower on a lot of different things, even things like road traffic accidents and stuff, which is kind of interesting. But I think population also plays a role here, right, that there would be a smaller population within this category. Okay, so risk factors are exactly what they sound like, right? What are the behaviors, the personal choices that people are making in their lifestyles that then make them prone to developing cancer or diabetes or cardiovascular disease? And you can throw these into 2 categories. There's modifiable and non-modifiable. And what I want to focus on is modifiable. And this is what the CDC and WHO also prioritize, because these are the things that we can educate people about and try to change. And I'm going to touch on things like physical activity, tobacco use, and unhealthy diets are going to be the big ones I'm going to focus on. Alcohol, I think, is also an obvious one that is really contributing to a lot of issues, from liver problems all the way to, again, accidents. So as you guys summarize with this graph, you can see that these 4 modifiable life choices are major contributors to the 4 main most common types of non-communicable diseases. And so if we could just educate people and get them to avoid smoking and avoid inhaling air that's polluted, making healthier dietary choices, all those sorts of things, we could drastically reduce rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, and so on. So let's talk just really briefly. I like these slides. They summarize the 4 leading non-communicable diseases. We've talked about cardiovascular disease. The main one is the coronary artery disease, right? Plaque builds up in the arteries, especially arteries leading to the heart muscle, which means lack of oxygen, heart muscle suffocates. You guys read a lot about strokes as well, which is blockage in the brain. So a lot of this is tied to dietary choices as well as physical inactivity. We were just talking about diabetes. The main 2 you need to know about is type 1 and type 2. You can also learn, if you want, that gestational occurs during pregnancy. Prediabetes is something that a lot of Americans are currently in, where we do have unusually high levels of blood sugar, but it's not full-blown insulin resistant yet. But type 1 and type 2 is what you should focus on. Remember, type 2 is what's far more common. It affects people later in life. That's when they're still producing insulin, but their cells aren't responding to it anymore. Whereas type 1 is actually an autoimmune disease where they're not unable to make insulin. And again, it's type 2 that's caused by a modifiable risk, right? That is something where lifestyle choices could help you to avoid developing something like type 2 diabetes. And again, just remember, it's all about insulin protein, which is that signaler that binds to the surface of cells and then allows cells to absorb glucose. And that is the only hormone we have that allows that to happen. So if insulin isn't present, then glucose is not going to enter cells. It stays in the bloodstream and can cause a number of different health effects there in the long term. We talked about cancer. Hopefully you know by now, cancer is just rapid creation of abnormal cells. They grow into what's called a tumor. This happens for a variety of reasons, but it's usually a mutation in cell division control mechanisms. Tumors can be benign, meaning they've grown, but then they stop. But what you want to avoid is malignant tumors, which are spreading and growing and can have pretty adverse health effects. I like this as a nice little summary diagram of what cell division should look like, right? Cell divides, and then they go through what's called apoptosis, where they basically destroy themselves. but that doesn't happen in cancer. So in cancer, something's wrong. Tumor suppressor gene isn't working. Proto-oncogenes aren't working. Cell just starts dividing like crazy into these huge mass of unhealthy cells that just won't stop growing. That's tumor. So as you noted with this graph, and I think this is fascinating, breast cancer is by far the most diagnosed cancer, but it is not the leading cause of death. That's actually lung cancer is the most fatal. And again, we talked about how lung cancer is due to the small cell. So it's really hard to detect before it can be treated, whereas breast cancer is very much detectable at a treatable stage. So lung cancer being the lead killer, again, they're talking about the small cell lung cancer there. It affects men far more than women, which you saw in that last graph there. And again, I think this is fascinating. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or just that men tend to have unhealthier lungs. Again, I really like that this group pointed out that it isn't necessarily only smoking, right? It could be breathing in asbestos or radon in basements and things like that. But again, definitely in terms of cigarette smoking is definitely a leading cause and is a modifiable behavior. You can just avoid that and avoid secondhand smoke, then you're drastically reducing your chances of developing something like lung cancer. And again, they mentioned asbestos and radon. Okay, we haven't really explored chronic respiratory diseases. We're going to get into the lungs in a little bit, but the common one you hear about is COPD, which just stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And this is a collection of different things, just like cardiovascular disease, that are just impairing the function of the lungs, right? There's just not enough airflow getting in, or you're not getting oxygen, right? Bronchitis is the swelling of the bronchi, so air can't get in. Asthma is kind of a common cause of a lot of that. Emphysema is when the alveoli just aren't exchanging gases with air anymore, right? You're just, even though you're breathing, you're not getting oxygen into your blood supply. And that's often what happens to smokers, but it's also like, you know, people who are working in coal mines and get a lot of coal dust in their lungs that also causes that. So it's not just smoker's cough, right? There's a number of different things attributed to that. So that covers the 4 main non-communicable diseases, all up here. And all of these are rooted in these modifiable risk factors, right? There are certain lifestyle choices that could drastically reduce the rates of these diseases if people just followed healthier guidelines. And so that's the goal of CDC and WHO, is to try to change people's behavior and then to reduce the risk. And then we see a reduced burden of disease, which saves money and all kinds of things. So again, tobacco use, you should avoid at all costs, right? Don't smoke. Vaping as well is being shown to be almost as bad. It's not as bad, but there's definitely, it's not health, you know, it's not perfectly healthy. It's not issue free. Changes in diet are what I'm really fascinated by, because since the Industrial Revolution and the dawn of agriculture, we have drastically changed our diet compared to what we were evolved to eat. So if you think about human body evolution over thousands of years, within the last couple hundreds of years, there's been a huge change, right? Our daily calorie intake is drastically up. We're continuing to eat milk a lot more. We're eating really fatty meats, which we never ate before. We used to eat lean meats. And again, our refined sugars in particular are really on the rise, right? Eating cereal on a daily basis, things like that is not something that our ancestors were doing, and our body's really struggling with how to handle this. And so that's why we see the rise of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease. In addition to that, not only now are we eating way more sugar and less minerals and vitamins and things like that, but we're also inactive, right? We're sedentary a lot more of the time, and that's driving up, again, cardiovascular, coronary artery disease, things like type 2 diabetes, and even contributing to cancers. And this in particular is just such an interesting modifiable behavior. There are so many benefits to physical activity, and I've heard it said that doctors, you know, if they said, oh, if we could prescribe something to you that would just improve your health and improve your attitude and improve your mind, you'd think people would go for it. And it's just exercise, even just 30 minutes a day. But it has a lot of different benefits that if you even just got out and walked for 30 minutes a day, can have long-term, help you avoid a lot of these non-communicable diseases. And the other thing that I'll touch on that relates again back to diet is, you know, we often focus on sugar, but sodium intake is also having a big impact. Restaurant foods in particular are really salt heavy, especially fast foods and things like that. And again, it's resulting in hypertension, where it's thickening our blood. We're getting a little more dehydrated, and it's, again, driving up our blood pressure, that kind of silent killer, just making your heart work a lot harder. And again, a lot of restaurant foods. I think about fast foods in particular, just something good to be conscious of. So definitely certain dietary choices you can make to help avoid that. Okay, questions on that? Or comments? All right, I know I threw a lot at you. I made a video of myself going through those same slides too, so you can go back to review that if you want to. All right, next thing I want to do is let you go to look at a little bit of data on your own. On the tasks to complete list, this is now step 5. I'm going to send you to the World Health Organization website, and there's 2 things I want you to do. The first is you're going to go to a collection of information about non-communicable diseases provided by the WHO website. And I'd like you to, did I not open this up? Look up a country and then fill in the information. There's a little data sheet that it'll give you. And I think the instructions I posted are pretty straightforward. Looks like some people are getting a head start on this. I don't want repeat countries. So I hate to say it, but United States is already entered. So check the list, make sure other people aren't picking your same country. If you see your same country already entered, then you're gonna need to pick another one. There's a wide variety, so it could have a personal connection to you or it couldn't. But work on that as step 1. And then step 2, there's a couple questions, but what I'll do is I'll just time this for about 10 minutes, but I'll keep an eye on this. Once we have numbers entered here fully, then we can have a little discussion. So I'll time for 10 minutes to fill in this table, and then if you have time to work on step number 2, which is a little quiz based on this, you can. Okay, go for it. Let me know if you need help.
Mr. Haight,
Yeah.
I think I need to go.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, go take it easy.
Thank you so much.
Take a rest.